The sweet sounds of Brian Smith on SBCOG on a Sunday morning in Torrance, California. Kidding. I was just talking to Beth about old radio and TV stuff that's being used these days. I had to do that coming out. What a beautiful rendition of that song. Don't ever stop thanking God for the gifted people we have in our midst. My name is Len, and I am a pastor at the South Bay Church of God in Torrance, California. And just a couple of minutes ago, I actually found a brand new video. Did a little bit of tweaking on it because I thought it needed a little bit of work, but I was so excited when I found it because it really sets the stage for where we're hoping to be going this morning. Let me see if we can give you a glimpse of us. And now that video I talked about, Lord willing. Yeah, and the extreme weirdness of this global crisis is made uniquely weird for a lot of people in North America these days with the cancellation of what would have been graduation celebrations. And oh man, when I think about it, I mean, it hasn't been all that, well, okay, that's not entirely true. It has been all that long since my seminary graduation, long time since my high school graduation, and I'm as amazed by technology as ever. But I gotta think switching, the sides of your tassel and then throwing your cap in the air online is not what most people prefer. So if you're a grad or a parent of a grad, we are with you. After a whole lot of sleepless nights, sweat, tears, and a whole lot more, probably a lot of coffee. Our former baby, Casey, is set to graduate with a master's in public and global health from Johns Hopkins in Baltimore on Tuesday. And like many, it will be a lot different than she had dreamed, including not having us there and us not able to be there. And it's even weirder for us because today's her birthday, and that all makes me even more emotional about our first song this morning, featuring two generations of Smiths, knowing there are two more generations nearby. So, four generations in one church. And I find it extra cool to see a teenager playing a 400-year-old hymn. And I want to send an online high five to Dominique for putting lyrics to it. So you're welcome to sing or mouth the words. have off to the side my monitor, aka my cell phone, and I'm watching in the comments section. And just by the way, that captures some of the comments. It captures all the comments. It doesn't capture all the people joined with us, but I'm watching, and I love watching those little hearts float up. I don't know who sends them. It's a little far away for me to tell, but oh man, Brian, Ethan, if you're watching, listening, there were a lot of hearts floating up on that one. Well, as hard as it is to believe, this is our ninth Sunday on Facebook Live. And speaking of hard to believe, this week I found a website that says Facebook has more than 2.6 billion active users. 2.6 billion. That's about the population of China and India combined. And that got me digging into other statistics, and I found a number of websites that say more than 4 billion people in the world are active internet users. 4 billion, more than 4 billion people regularly go online. And I want you to hold on to that word go. Okay? The word go is a key to our time together today. One website broke the math down to show how every day, on average, 640,000 people go online for the first time every day. That means 27,000 people go online for the first time every hour. And on top of that, as you see there in California, about 33 million people go online regularly. And there's the word go again. And figures like those barely scratch the surface of why I am so uncomfortable with phrases like reopening the church, or conversations about how long it's been since we closed. Don't get me wrong, it is increasingly hard to not be together physically for times like this, to not be swapping hugs or handshakes on Yukon Avenue. I'm just saying we have unprecedented ways to fulfill the go part of what is called the Great Commission, and to carry out the part of the greatest commandment where Jesus told us to love our neighbor. He went on to explain that's not just the people who live next door. The South Bay Church of God is open in ways it never has been. And many people are going in ways we couldn't have even dreamed 20 years ago. Most people don't realize they're going, but think about what we're able to do today, again, that we couldn't do 20 years ago. Think about it. We're just coming up on the 13th anniversary of the launch of the first iPhone. So what we're able to do today just boggles the mind. Being open and going in new ways are some of the reasons we keep talking about giving. Not only that, when the time comes to open our doors again, being ready by following what will certainly be new guidelines will be costly. And along with that, we're likely going to continue going online in a number of ways, even after the doors get reopened for the first time. Giving is always a foundational part of worship, and by God's design, it is an essential part of life for a local church. Would you join me in prayer? Oh, Father God, Creator, Sustainer, everything, what we have literally at our fingertips is so beyond comprehension. You have worked in men and women and teenagers and preteens, giving them gifts that allow us to be able to do things like this, with phone calls from literally all around the world waiting, and calls and online connections we can make. This is just so genuinely and completely amazing. Keep teaching us, keep reminding us to use this kind of thing well. You know the costs of it. You know all the costs of a local church. Thank you for the way you've been meeting our needs that way. Please, please keep meeting those needs. Please keep pouring wisdom into the leaders of this place that they would know how best to use what you allow to come in. Now, as we turn to your truth, to your words, open our hearts, open our minds, open our souls. In the name of the Savior, Jesus Christ, and for the growth of his kingdom. Amen. All right, let me give some personal, specific, recent examples of what going and loving can look like in 2020. On Wednesday, I received an email from a couple in Minnesota. We had become good friends in Ecuador. And right now, they're trying to help an Ecuadorian friend of theirs escape from domestic abuse in Peru, where she lives with her husband and 2 children. The couple that connected with me thought I might have contacts in Peru who might be able to help this woman. And within 30 minutes, I was able to connect with 3 longtime friends in different parts of America. They connected, they talked, and came up with what they thought was the best strategy. And now one of them is working online with friends in Peru to help that dear lady. And that brings me to another way we can all always go. Would you please try to remember to go to prayer for this woman? Especially because, as with many in abusive homes, she is now reconsidering her decision to leave. But nonetheless, the connections have been made to at least try to help her. And the way those connections were made illustrates going and loving neighbors in this new 2020 style. That was all set in motion on Wednesday. On Thursday morning, I got another picture of what going can be like in 2020. I went online on Thursday morning, and Facebook's memory anniversary picture feature generated something from 6 years ago. So I reposted this picture of Beth and Jenny and Casey, so all my friends who went online could see it. Of the first 20 comments or likes, 9 were in or from different countries, and 10 were in different states. That further illustrates how fast and how far any of us can go today. Well, then on Thursday evening, in a first for the South Bay Church of God, some of us went online for what turned into a powerful and special time of prayer and Bible reading on Zoom. And I know Zoom isn't for everyone, but it is a way to connect over priceless things in May of 2020. And Lord willing, we will be going there again this coming Thursday evening. And by the way, one of the simplest missional things anyone can do in May of 2020 is simply clicking like on this South Bay Facebook page before you close it today. I do not have a clue how it works, but clicking like is not as much about, giving somebody a pat on the back as it is about creating all kinds of new online paths between a time like this and all the people you're connected to on Facebook. Again, I do not understand how it spreads. I just know it does. And if you appreciate a time like this, a seemingly simple like can help spread it for upcoming weeks. Now, as brutal as the past few months have been, I believe there are exciting and crucial things going on. And they're part of the ongoing inspection of the real foundation of the South Bay Church of God. For the past few months, we've been looking closely at some fundamental truths a church like this must be built on. Keeping the rhythm of a two-word summary each week, we have seen God is, God speaks, God died, God lives, God judges, God saves, God comes, God gives, and for today, God sends. And that part of the foundation has shifted as much as anything over the past 10 weeks. As we look at the statement God sends, I believe we must extend the statement to God sends us. And there are unprecedented ways for him to do that. And on the way to seeing what it could mean in May of 2020, let's go back to the first time God sent someone after the resurrection. Now, I'm going to use Eugene Peterson's version of it because I think it uniquely captures some of the key imagery. The scene opens on the third day after Jesus' crucifixion and trial. And with the first light of day and the restrictions that came with the Sabbath behind them, some women were heading to the tomb where they had seen Jesus' body, his mutilated, his very dead body placed. And Eugene Peterson wrote it this way: suddenly the earth reeled and rocked under their feet as God's angel came down from heaven and came right up to where they were standing. He rolled back the stone and then sat on it. I like the thought of an angel rolling back that massive stone and then just sitting on it. The guards at the tomb were scared to death, and they were so frightened they couldn't move. And with the guards frozen in fear, the angel told and then showed the women Jesus was not in the tomb. Then God used the angel to send the women on a special assignment. The first time after the resurrection, God sent people. The first thing the angel said to those women rather, is the same in every Bible I checked. The first word the angel said to the women was go. Now, originally that was not written as a command, although it looks like it in almost all of our Bibles. The command part of this came later. Matthew wrote the word for that more literally like going and added the word for quickly. So it's kind of like the angel could see the women about to take off, and he gave them instructions and a reason for going. That was the command part of it. It was like a mission. It was the first command from God after the resurrection. And I believe it is really important to see as we consider the statement God sends. Because when God sends, there is a reason and a message attached. And this is it. The angel said to the women, tell the disciples, Jesus has been raised from the dead. And they are to what? Go back to Galilee, where they will see him. Now, the women knew the disciples were hiding in a locked room in Jerusalem, and they ran to tell them what the angel had said. Think about it. The disciples hiding in a locked room, the women bursting in, told them an angel had talked to them. The angel said Jesus was alive, and they needed to take a 70-mile walk to Galilee. The women had one more enormous shock before they delivered that news to the disciples, and I really hope there will be videos in some form of scenes like this to watch in heaven, especially scenes like when Jesus met them, stopping them in their tracks. No kidding. They fell to their knees, embraced his feet, and worshiped him. He told them, "Go, tell my brothers that they are to go to Galilee, and I'll meet them there." Now, Matthew doesn't tell us what happened when the women got to the disciples. He picked up his report with them following God's command to go as they headed for the mountain Jesus had set for their reunion. And again, that was about 70 miles on foot. Why would Jesus send them so far? I wonder if it had something to do with the fact that Galilee was where most of them had met Jesus, where they first heard and they first answered his call, "Follow me." They first saw his miracles in Galilee. They first saw the healing of bodies and souls there. They first heard him teach there. They first saw people respond there. So maybe Jesus called his disciples back to where it all started so he could send them where they had never been before. Let me repeat that. Maybe Jesus called his disciples back to where it all started so he could send them where they had never been before. Do you feel like we're in places we've never been before these days? I believe that touches on a crucial part of the rhythm of Sabbath rest, of going back to our earliest days with Jesus, to remember the wonder of meeting him, to re-experience it, and to think about all that we've learned about him, and all we've learned from him, and all we've learned about ourselves since then. With the amazing way God has made our brains, we don't have to go anywhere to do that. Yet we can go anywhere we want. Here. Open eyes, closed eyes. Go back. Think about then. Think about since then. I mean, as with the disciples, a lot has likely happened for you. A lot has likely happened to you, and a lot has likely happened through you since starting to follow Jesus. I mean, victories and defeats and doubts and growth and failures and pressures and high mountains and deep, dark valleys. I believe there is value in regularly asking and letting the Holy Spirit take us back to when we first really heard Jesus say our own personal versions of the words, "Follow me." Well, the disciples did that. And when they got to Galilee, Matthew reported the moment they saw him, they worshiped him. Some, though, held back, not sure about worship, about risking themselves totally. Now, despite that, or maybe because of it, Jesus leaned in and gave them what has come to be called the Great Commission. This is part of it. Go and make disciples of all the nations, or more literally, ethnicities, people, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. But the key is go. Despite the way it seems in most versions of the Bible, there again, go was not a command. It was written more like "in you're going" or "as you go." So movement was assumed. What I call our ongoing going. Jesus knew after he was done talking to them in Galilee, after that time of reflection and celebration, they would go. They would ultimately re-enter the flow and the rhythm of their lives. They would keep going. And rather than go, it was more like Jesus said, as you are going. Now, think about it. Going physically, and what's the phrase we use for what we're doing right now? We say we go online. That word go is enormous today. It's always been enormous. Once we realize we're going, in our ongoing going, we hit the only verb written as an imperative in this portion, as a command. It is disciple. It was written as a verb. The word for disciple there was a verb. Most people see it as a noun, but it was actually the command in the Great Commission to disciples. The command to all disciples is to disciple. The going is assumed, the going is expected. The ongoing going leads to the command to all disciples, disciple. And by the way, despite the way it appears in most Bibles, it did not say make disciples. There was no word for make in that original statement. No human can make a disciple. That's what God does. Although he does use people to build other people. That's why we're checking the foundations of this church, because we want to see people built, not buildings. Although we have concerns for the building, we have responsibility for the building. The Great Commission, though, is about building people. We're not told to make disciples. We're told to disciple. It's another one of the reasons that video with Brian and Ethan got me so excited. What a great picture of discipling. Going, making disciples. I know it may seem like there's not much difference between making a disciple and discipling, but I've come to believe seeing the distinction is crucial. God does not put pressure on disciples to make disciples. He just tells us to disciple. The making is up to him. The responsibility of disciples is to disciple. And we are to do that as we are going. And as the lead pastor of the South Bay Church of God, the primary place I go to fulfill that is here during this unique form of gathered worship. And once we finish here, all disciples are to go discipling. I hope some of the statistics at the beginning showed the unprecedented potential of the going part of the Great Commission in May of 2020. Now, at the same time, a lot of people are still going the old-fashioned way, going to work, taking walks in your neighborhood, taking your children out to pick up trash in your neighborhood, taking your neighbor's trash cans in and out, taking homemade masks to coworkers. That's why this peppy little video stood out to me. I know most people are still stuck inside on what is so casually called social media. But is it one of those things that we get so used to it, we're so accustomed to having it, we lose the amazement that should go with it? Oh, God alone knows how much I can do my own grumbling about technology, but oh my, we can go and we can serve and we can love in ways the first disciples never could have dreamed. Text messages, emails, devices, computers, smartphones, even old landline phones that can now tap into all the stuff that gets done online. I mean, we go in the biblical sense without moving more than our fingers. The question is, why are we going? And what are we doing? And what are we saying as we go? And over the past several decades, it seems to have become easy for people to hear a study like this and say, well, I don't really have the gift of teaching, or I don't really have the gift of evangelism, or I don't have the gift of discipling. Well, most of us do not have PhDs in medicine or microbiology, but we seem to be talking about those things a lot these days. Do only people who have PhDs in political science talk about politics? I don't have a degree in physical education, but oh, I do my share of talking about sports. I don't even have a degree in meteorology, but I talk about the weather all the time. I realize some people are quote unquote better at talking about their faith than others. Some people are more equipped, some people are more experienced. But Jesus didn't give any exemptions when he told his disciples, which extends to us 2,000 years later, as you are going, tell people about your faith. Tell people about where your faith is. Tell people about why your faith is there. And as you are with other people with like faith, learn and grow in that faith. Making disciples, if you will, can have a downward direction, it can have a horizontal direction, and it can have an upward direction where we're being discipled. We're with disciples at similar places in the journey, and we're trying to disciple people who haven't been where we have, who don't know what we do. And as much as ever, when it comes to our physical neighbors, there are all kinds of ways to do our part in the great commandment, which is to love them. But the great commandment of loving neighbors includes discipling wisely, learning how to do it more effectively, more tenderly, more confidently. Until we're back together more physically, and quite likely after then, there are so many ways to go and to love, to disciple, and to be discipled. That's one of many reasons I like the first line of the song that we're going to have next as it's sung slash prayed to God. I invite you to sing and to pray it to God. The first line sets the tone for it, where you're singing, you're praying, you're talking to God and say, you call me out on the waters, the great unknown. How the water's looking for you these days? Things seeming a little bit unknown? At least that was my sarcastic voice. So I invite you to sing, to pray the rest of the song with the music team. Whew. Wow. Leads us right into the benediction. It's from Ephesians chapter 5. We'll do verses 1 and 2, and then jump down to 15 and 16. So, receive, please, the benediction. Imitate God, therefore, in everything you do, because you are his dear children. Live a life full of love. Live a life filled with love, following the example of Jesus. He loved us and offered himself as a sacrifice for us, a pleasing aroma to God. Jumping down to verse 15. So be careful how you live. Don't live like fools, but like those who are wise. Make the most of every opportunity in these evil days. Make the most of every opportunity. In your going, disciple. In your going, love your neighbor. It sounds so simple coming out of my mouth. Oh, why, oh Lord, why do we make it so complicated?